An application for a patent on pigs. Are pigs an invention or the common property of all of us? Who owns the pig? Genes on pig DNA, decoded and described by the Monsanto Corporation of America. But these genes have always been there. Will we soon be forced to pay fees for nature's heritage?
It is a very, very big business plan, and it includes control of food, from the seed and the field to the fork.
The politically charged patent is soon to go into effect worldwide. Christoph Then, a farmer from Swabia, sees his livelihood in jeopardy. Is he soon to be prohibited from breeding pigs because their genetic material belongs to a corporation?
Wie kann denn jemand ein Patent auf Dinge beanspruchen, die es schon gibt? Da kann er gleich ein Patent auf Sonnenlicht beanspruchen oder dass man hier zum Kinderkriegen ein Patent braucht und nicht dann Lizenzgebühren abführen muss.
The discontented farmer believes that these piglets might also be affected by the patents the American agricultural concern Monsanto is applying for, because the genes cited therein are not an invention, but already exist in almost all pigs. The scientists at Monsanto claim in their application that certain pig genes promise more rapid flesh growth. If the patent is granted, Monsanto could in future also demand license fees for the Betzelberger's animals if this gene is naturally found in them, and the farmers cannot prove that they didn't use Monsanto's patented breeding methods. Monsanto, company headquarters in St. Louis, Missouri, heavily guarded like the maximum security wing of a prison. This is where the idea for a worldwide pig monopoly was born. In the lab, scientists are hard at work on an ongoing series of new patents. The goal is worldwide domination in the field of food production. Monsanto began by manufacturing insecticides and later went on to genetically engineer the plants themselves for greater resistance. This allowed the plants to better tolerate Monsanto's own crop sprays. Of primary importance was that everything could be patented.
Patenting is all about control, and Monsanto is all about control. You know, they're already the #1 seed company in the world, and they control those seeds through patents, through government monopolies, so they and only they can use those seeds. The common heritage of the world, the seeds of the world, are now owned primarily by one company that has them in monopoly.
The patent authorities are not yet prepared to issue a statement, but the decision on whether to grant the patent could set the precedent for how the other 159 countries where the patent application has been submitted will decide. The major question remains whether life forms should be subject to patents at all.
It's a very broad patent that would grant, if it's accepted worldwide, would grant Monsanto control of a significant percentage of all the pigs in the world. And here's what's so critical. The patent isn't just for the pigs, it's for the pigs' offspring. So Mother Nature works for Monsanto's profit. Every time pigs naturally reproduce, that is a violation of the patent that you would have to pay Monsanto for.
In Europe, as well as in the United States, patents are not only being granted today for genetically engineered organisms, but also for naturally occurring animals, for example, lab animals. Every piglet in whose DNA inspectors find fattening gene markers could then be subject to licensing fees.
We have just completed a study that shows that they have threatened thousands of American farmers with lawsuits for violating their patents. That over 129 lawsuits have been filed by Monsanto against American farmers, and they have reaped millions of dollars. And this is Monsanto coming in with its huge legal team, all of its power coming after a small farmer in South Dakota or Nebraska or in Indiana, trespassing on their land, making up, in many cases, making up lies about what these farmers were doing and not doing, persecuting them, and often driving them out of business.
Ruined and convicted. Percy Schmeiser was sued by Monsanto for patent infringements worth several $1 million. They had discovered patented seed on the Canadian farmer's land. Schmeiser, a staunch opponent of genetic engineering, claimed that the seed had been carried onto his field via pollen from neighboring fields. But his protests were in vain. In the United States and other countries, there are increasingly frequent reports of problems with genetic engineering. Harvests are failing, pests are returning, and allergies are multiplying. Monsanto has worked a new clause into its more recent contracts that forbids farmers from suing the company if genetically engineered seeds should fail. In some American states, farmers who feed their pigs exclusively with genetically modified corn or soy have noticed a mysterious drop in their stock's fertility.
We went on for years, couldn't figure out what our conception rate problem was. We worked with a veterinary, spent $1,000 here, $1,000 there, nobody can figure out what was going on. And we just finally give up. I mean, when we quit, we were down to 30% conception rate.
Jeffrey Smith wants to know what the farmer believes is the impact of the whole thing on people, on consumers.
Who's the guinea pig now?
Imagine is the advertising slogan chosen by the biotech corporation. Imagine that the food Monsanto wants to supply to the world is not safe. What happens then? Monsanto hopes that American gene technology, patent-ready technology, will go on to conquer the world. Securing resources for itself is at the top of the company's political agenda.
The concept that genetically modified crops are needed to feed the world is not only a terrible spin and lie, it actually works against feeding the world. It gives the impression, first of all, that production is the key point in feeding the world, when in fact we have more food per person than any time in human history, and 30,000 people die every day from starvation.
Roseman has lost his entire operation. He thinks it has something to do with the feed. For years, he fed his animals only genetically modified corn.
The end result here was that I could not incur the debt anymore. I couldn't pay back. We lost right at $1 million with this thing. I lost my farm and my livelihood.
Munich professor Eckhard Wolff has observed during the last 10 to 15 years a significant decline in the fertility of pigs and cows during exactly the same period in which they have been given more and more genetically modified feed.
Monsanto introduced the first genetically modified hormone for animals, bovine growth hormone. And what we know now is that the research appeared to be rigged to avoid finding problems.
Obstacles are placed in the path of the press as well. Popular reporter Jane Acri researched for Fox News the side effects of the bovine growth hormone, such as udder infections and pus residues in the milk.
We found that there is a difference in the milk. Monsanto says there isn't, but there is. Their own studies show that the milk has a higher spin-off hormone called IGF-1, which is a very potent growth hormone. It's found in mother's milk. It helps babies grow. It also helps cancer cells grow. It helps all cells grow. On the Friday before the Monday air date, it was going to air on the 6 o'clock news. It was a 5-part series called The Mystery in Your Milk. Monsanto sent the first of 2 very strongly worded letters that said, stop the reports, your reporters are idiots, their sources are incompetent. And a week later they sent a second letter from a New York lawyer that said that there would be dire consequences for Fox News if the story airs.
The reporter is called off the story. Her superiors decide that the report first has to be revised by the Fox News lawyers and Monsanto. The hormone is still on the market in the United States. The meat doesn't even have to be labeled as such when it comes onto the market. The long-term consequences for the consumer remain to be seen. If a company succeeds at exercising near total control over pig breeding, thanks to a wide-ranging patent, it could legally begin to genetically engineer the animals as well, something that Monsanto has already done with plants. A nightmare for nature conservationists, a lucrative vision for industry.